Today we are going to build a Tesla homepage with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We are going to start with HTML structure, then we are going to do some styling for the header, then styling for the sections, and then the next step will be this site navigation. And the last part will be this scrolling functionality that when we scroll, it snaps between those sections. I will put timestamps in the description, and now let's jump into the code. So as always, we start with an empty directory, and the first thing we are going to do is to create some HTML structure. So in this directory, I will create a new file called index.html. Alright, and in this file, I will put some basic HTML. This is my default boilerplate for HTML5 files. And here inside, let's see, first we need some header, and then we have those sections for each car So first the header, and in here the first thing is that we have this Tesla logo. So I'll create a header and in here a link to the logo. Let's give it a class name logo. And in here we need to put an image. So I will just copy it from here. And this is an SVG, so I can do edit as HTML, copy and paste here. All right. Now the thing with this website is that when it's big enough, it will also show the navigation in the middle. So I will also put it here. So navigation, that's center, and I will add also desktop class. So it will show only on desktop. And in here we have some links that I will add like this, copy and paste. Now I will make links of those. Ref will be empty. This will be an empty link for each, like this. And now maybe let's open some preview of how it looks like for us. Yeah, we just have a big logo and some links here. Let's also add the links that are on the right side. So shop account menu. So nav.right.desktop. And here we will have shop account menu. So one with shop, another with account, and the last one with menu. And in the menu, as you can see, it's the only one that is visible when it's the mobile view. So we are going to add some extra class names for those two. So those will be only visible on desktop. So class, desktop, and same on this one, class, desktop. This way it will be easier for us to hide those and those two on desktop. Okay, now let's add the CSS file. So here inside our directory, new file, styles.css, and we need to also link it here. So link and styles.css. All right, now let's go to our CSS file. So now inside our CSS file, let's style our header, and it will contain 3 parts. So the left part with logo, the center part with some navigation, and the right part with some navigation. So I will use a display grid for this, and template columns will be auto 1FR auto, like this. Now our logo has disappeared because it has been squeezed to like 0 pixels. So let's fix this. So a logo, let's say that height of it will be 12 pixels and the width will be 100, and here it is. Now inside our header, we don't want this purple color, but instead we want this Tesla black. So let's see what color is it. Color, and it's this. So I will copy and I will use it globally here in my body, color, and this. Whoops. And now inside our logo, let's do color inherit. So now the logo is black. And now for the links, let's do header a color inherit. All right. Now for the navigation that is in center, let's do text align center, like this. And now for all navigations inside header navigation for each link in navigation, let's remove this underline. So text decoration none. Now we don't have underlines, but now let's add some padding. So padding, let's say 5 pixels from the top and the bottom and 10 pixels from the sides. Yeah, so we have some padding here. Next, also some padding from the sides. So header, padding, let's say 5 pixels from the top and the bottom, and let's say 20 pixels from the sides. Yeah, that's better. Now let's fix the font, because this one differs a lot from what we have here. So they are using a commercial font that I don't want to buy. So I found a similar font on Fonts Google. The font that looks really alike is M+, yeah. And we need the standard wave of this and also the medium. So that's, I have marked those two. So now if we click here, we can use this link and we can add it to our HTML. So let's go here and let's add it here. And now inside our styles, we can copy this part and add it to our body. That way our font will look much better. So instead of this, we get this. Okay, but now as you remember, this navigation center part and those two should disappear when it's a small screen. So this shouldn't be a case. It should only show the logo and the menu button. So as you remember, in our index.html, we have marked this center navigation with desktop and also those two links with desktop. So now we can add some CSS that hides this desktop links if it's not desktop size. So I will add it here at the top, that desktop will have display initial, but only if min width is, yeah, let's say 768, but default for desktop will be display none. So display none. Okay, so now we don't see the navigation, but let's see why we don't see this. Okay, it's because we get this up here and it shouldn't be here. Okay, so now we see menu here, but it should be to the right. So let's go here and header, navigation right, the text align should be right, and now menu is on the right side. All right. Also, the header should stick to the top when we are scrolling. So let's add position fixed, top 0, and z index, let's say 2. And width needs to be 100%. But as you can see now, the menu goes outside of the screen. And that's because we need to do some CSS reset, because 100% is calculated from here, because the body element has some padding here. So on all elements, I will remove padding 0, and margin also 0. But also let's do box sizing, border box. And now as you can see, the menu is here. Okay, now let's put some sections and images. So back to index.html. And as you can see on the page, we have several sections with image, and on every image we have some text, header and a subline, and those two buttons, and it repeats on all sections. Right, so now under our header, let's add some sections, and we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. All right. So section times 7, and now let's do some styling for our section. So let's say on the beginning that section will have height of 100 view height, so it will take 100% of the height. So as you can see, now we can do some scrolling, and to make it even more visible, let's do border 5 pixels solid red. So now we have some frames to scroll, but we will put some images here. So let's go here and let's new directory images, and here inside images we need our images, and I have prepared the link so I can go to my terminal and do cd images, and now I can do wget David tesla.link/tesla.zip. And now I have Tesla zip that I can unzip. So let's do unzip Tesla zip. Yeah. And now I have some images here okay, so now let's add those images. So first we have model 3, then model Y, S, X. Okay, so here inside our sections, let's mark this, the first one. And now inside all of those, let's do style, and background image, URL, and here images. And let's test with model 3 like this. And the second is model Y. We had model S, model X. Then we have solar panels, roof, and accessories. So solar panels, roof, and accessories. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, we get some pictures, but they're weirdly positioned. So let's go to styles, CSS. Let's remove this border and let's do background size, cover, and now background position, center from the top and the bottom, and center on the sides. So now it's centered and it covers each section. All right, so now we need this content on each section. So as you can see, there is like model 3, order online, or for touchless delivery, and those two buttons. So now let's go to our index.html, and here inside every section we need to add some content, those headlines and buttons. So I will create a div inside each one, div.content. So it will create a div with class name content. And inside this div, let's add h1 with this main slogan. Let's name it Tesla. Let's name it model 3. Then let's add some paragraph. And as you can see, we have here under this paragraph. So here inside, let's put this text, and of this touchless delivery, we need to make a link. So I will do like this, and let's say that ref, so the link will be empty for now. Let's see. Yeah, it shows some text here. I missed 2 places, here and here. Okay, but now let's also add those buttons. So under this paragraph, let's add another div with buttons. So let's call this one div buttons, and inside we need the buttons, but they will be actual links. So I will use a tag, and the first one will be custom order, and the next one will be existing inventory, like this. So now if I save, go back to our page, yeah, we have some links here. But now let's go to style CSS and let's style it. Okay, so inside our section, we have a div with content, and let's make this one width of 100% and height of 100 view height. So it will take whole space from the top and the bottom. But now we also need to add some spacing from the top and from the bottom. So let's do padding top. Let's say 15% of the height of the screen, like this. And padding from the bottom, let's put the same. Yeah, but now the text needs to be centered. So text align center. Yeah, that's better. And now the header should be much bigger. So I will do section h1. And here font size, let's say 3 rem. Yeah, that's better. And now all links inside the section, so section A should have the default color, so color inherit. So now this link is black, those 2 links are also black, but our buttons that are links for now should be put to the bottom and should look different. So to put those to the bottom, I will make this content div a grid, and I will tell this grid to take this to the top, this to the bottom, and the third element should take all available space. So here inside section content, let's do display grid, and now as you can see, it's spread around here, here, and here. but we want to change it. So this one will take just a little space, this as well, and this will take all the possible space to the bottom. So we need grid template rows, and here the first part, model 3, will be main content. So just the minimum part the content needs. The second will be auto, and the third will be main content. Okay, now I saved. As you can see, the first part, main content, is this one. The second part, order online, is this part. So it goes to the top, but it takes all the possible space except those two. And here we have those two link buttons. So now let's fix those. So section and buttons and a link inside this div with buttons class name should be display block. So the first, so it's like this one on this level, this one on this level, but if the screen is bigger, we can make them apart on the left and right side. But for small screens like this one, let's put them one after another here, one under another. So the next thing is that they have rounded corners and background. So let's focus on this one first. So let's say that background color, it's a light gray. So let's say EEE, yeah. And the color is almost black. So color inherit, it will inherit from the body, this almost black color. We also need some padding. So from the top and the bottom, let's say 12 pixels. And from the sides, let's say 50 pixels. Now let's see how it looks like. Yeah, almost. Now also rounded corners. So border radius of, let's say 25 pixels. Does it work? Yes, it does. And text decoration should be none. And we have small letters here, but it should be big letters. So inside CSS we can do text transform uppercase. So now we have big letters, but the font size should be smaller. Let's do font size 12 pixels and let's make it thicker. So font wave 500. Yeah, that's better. Now if we have enough space, we should put them on each side. So media min with, let's say 768. Then section buttons will be something, and the default section with buttons should be a display with grid, but row gap should be like, let's say 20 pixels. So we have some gap between the first and the second. Let's say here, and let's make this one smaller. Yeah, 20 pixels should work fine. But if we have enough space, so let's say 768 pixels, let's say that template columns, grid template columns should be 1FR, 1FR, yeah. And the max width should be, let's say 640 pixels, and it should be centered, so margin 0 auto. And we need also some space here, so column gap 20 pixels, yeah. And now the first one should be darker gray as it is here. So here we have styling for our buttons. Let's add styling for our first button. So section buttons and the link, that is a first child, should have a dark background. So background color should be dark gray. So let's say 444, and color should be white. So FFF. Yeah, that works. Our navigation shows even for this small screen, so let me change this one to 1200. Yeah, now it's better. But if the screen is that small, let's fix the width of our sections with buttons. So let's say margin will be 0 from the top and the bottom, but 40 pixels on the sides. Yeah, so now we have some space here. Okay, so now basic styling is done. Let's make it bigger. Yeah, it works. It's here. Yeah. So now the next thing is this menu navigation. That does nothing for us for now, but here it opens this sidebar. So let's create our sidebar now. So inside our index.html, directly after header, we can create an element called aside. And here we can put some links that we want to show and hide. It can be div, but aside sounds better. So we have all those links, and I will just mark them like this, copy, and here I will just paste them. So now let's make links of those. href will be empty link here, and here will be closing tag. So this opening tag, let's put on all those, and now on the right side it should be closing tag. Okay, so now we have those links here, but we also need a X button here. So let's do button. Let's call this one close, and it should be just X, but I will use ampersand times, so it will be like a prettier X, not like X, but only like times, so it will be more even. So here it is, it's barely visible, but I will make it bigger. So now back to our styles CSS, and let's add some styling for our aside. So aside should be position fixed to the right side, so fixed, and right should be 0, and the width should be not 100%, but let's say 320 pixels. Yeah, so now we have it on the right side, but we also need this white color, so background color should be white. And now let's add also some padding, let's say 30 pixels. Yeah, and the z index should be, let's say 4. Yeah, and now we need to place links under each other. So aside A should be display block, and color should be inherit. So we got the default dark color inherit. Now text decoration, no underline, so text decoration none. And let's also add some spacing here. So let's say padding 5 pixels from the top and the bottom, and 0 from the sides. Yeah, that's better. And let's make this one have 100%. So here have 100 view have like this. Now it's better. Now let's fix this times button here. So aside button dot close. Let's make this one bigger. So font size, let's say 24 pixels, and we don't need border on this button, so border 0, and background color none. Oops, it's not none, it should be transparent, and now it should be on the right side. So let's say position absolute, it could be fixed also, but let's say absolute. Top will be 10 pixels, and right should be also 10 pixels. Yeah, now it's here. And let's also add some padding of, let's say 10 pixels. Okay, so now it's here. But let's also add some more padding from the top here. So here inside our aside, let's add 50 pixels from the top and the bottom. Yeah, now let's see here. Yeah, almost exactly the same. The times button, the close button is much thinner. So I will do something like this. I will change the font family to anything that is sans serif. But the font weight, I will make it 100, so really thin text. So now this times is really thin. The text should be a little smaller, let's say 13 pixels. So a link font size should be, let's say 12 pixels. No, this one is too small. 14 pixels. Yeah, this one is better. And more spacing. So instead of 5, let's say 8. Yeah, that will work. Let's test with 12. Yeah, I think this one is better, and more spacing for the top. So here inside our aside, instead of padding 50, let's do padding 80. Yeah, now it's much better. More padding from the sides. Let's try with 40. Yeah, that's better. And let's change here maybe font weight to 500. Yeah. Now we need this backdrop here. So as you can see, it's blurred. So it's blurred and it's darker. And in here, everything is, yeah, standard. So I will add a div with backdrop class here alongside this aside. So let's do a div dot backdrop. Yeah, that is an empty div. Now back to styles CSS. And now let's style our backdrop div. So position should be fixed, so it's from top and the bottom. And let's do inset to 0. And this one does that, it stretches the div from the top to the bottom, from left to side. And now let's add some background color. I will use RGBA and dark, but with 40%. Yeah, so now it's dark here, maybe a little too dark. Let's add 35 here instead. And now we need this blur. So I will do background, it's called filter, background filter, blur, and let's say 5 pixels blur. Yeah, so now it's blurred, but now we need to fix the closing of this navigation and opening. So let's say that by default this backdrop is not visible, so display none, and this sidebar navigation should be hidden to the right side. So let's see, aside, it's right 0, right minus 320 pixels. Yeah, so now it's hidden to the right side. And now we want to create a script that when we click this menu, it opens this aside and it shows this backdrop. So back to our index.html, let's go to the bottom of our page and let's add a script. So script with source, that will be, let's say, just nav.js. This one doesn't exist yet, but let's create it here inside our directory, new file, nav.js, like this. And now we want to register an onClick event on this menu. So I will first go to this menu link and I will add a class name here, or maybe an ID. So ID, menu button, and now it will be easier for me in nav.js to find it. So document, get element by ID, menu button, and now we want to register an onClick event. We get an event that we want to run prevent default, so we don't trigger the link redirection. What next? We want to open a menu, this sidebar menu. So let's create a separate function for this. Const open menu equals an arrow function, and what it should be doing, it needs to find the backdrop. So document query selector, so we can find this backdrop and we can add a class name to it. So class name like this, and it should be class name backdrop with also active like this. And also when we open, we want to add the class on this aside. So document query selector aside, let's also add a class name of active here like this. Let's also copy this and create almost the same function but for closing the menu. So close menu, and when we are closing menu on the backdrop, we should remove this active class, and also from the aside we should remove this active class. So now when we are clicking the menu button that is here, we want to open menu, and now let's add some CSS to those active on the backdrop and on the aside. So back to our style CSS, and now aside that is active. Remember that we moved from 0 to minus 320. Now we can do just right 0. So now when we click, it opens, but the X doesn't work yet. But let's fix this backdrop first. So here, backdrop active, it should be display block. Yeah, so now it's visible. Now let's fix closing. So if I click on the backdrop or here on this X button, and this X button should be cursor pointer. So I will have a hand link here. So if I click a backdrop or this X, I should close this menu. So let's go back to nav.js, and here we need to add document query selector, and we have this button that close, but let's make just sure that is inside our aside, and let's add on click. We get an event, and let's add arrow function here, and we will just close menu, and we will do the same for the backdrop. So on backdrop click, on click event with an arrow function here, and we'll just do close menu. Okay, so now if we click here, it opens. If we click here, it closes. Same on the X button here. Yeah, it works. But I want to fix some prettier animation. So this sidebar should like slides from the right side. So I can go back to styles CSS, and here, as you can see, aside is on the right -320, and then it's right 0. But I can add some transition here. So transition should be right, and let's say 0.4 seconds with ease. Now if I click here, it should move from the right side. Yeah, smoothly. Okay, so now the last part is this scroll snapping script. So as you can see, even if I scroll just a little bit, it snaps to the next or previous section. And I want to have the same behavior here on my website. So let's open index.html and let's add another script at the bottom of our page. So let's do script source, and let's call this one scroll.js. Now let's create this script here. So new file scroll.js. All right. So what do we need to do here? First, we need to register a scroll event. So let's do a document, add event listener, and on scroll, let's add an arrow function here. And now when user scrolls, what do we want to do? We want to know at which direction the user is scrolling and then jump to the next section. All right, so first we need a direction, and to get a direction, we need to compare the current scroll position with the previous. So we have current scroll position in window.page y offset, but we don't have the previous. But we can save the current one and compare when the scroll occurs again. So right now the page y offset is, let's say, 0, but we don't know what was the previous offset. So let's say we will save it in a document. So I will just do here at the top, I will add document, and let's call this one last scroll position, and let's say that this will be 0 as a default. And after we're done with the scrolling event, we will update this value. So document last scroll position equals this. So now every time we are scrolling, we save the current scroll position to this last scroll position. Okay, but now we want to have the direction. So to get the direction, let's do const direction. We can compare the current scroll position with the previous. So if we are in the middle of the page, but the previous scroll position was 0, then we know that we scrolled to the bottom. Otherwise, we scrolled to the top. So for example, if the last scroll position was 0, but the current position is 100 pixels, then we know that we scrolled to the bottom because 100 pixels is bigger than 0. So to calculate this, we can take window page y offset minus document last scroll position. So if this will be bigger than 0, then we are scrolling down. Otherwise, we are scrolling up. So if our current position is 100 pixels, but the previous was 50, then the difference of this will be 50, and it's bigger than 0, so we are scrolling down. Next, we need to know at what section we are currently at. So right now I am at the first section, so index is 0, but a user can open the page with a already scrolled website, and there is some such functionality on many browsers. So I want to know what is the current position, and I want to know what is the current section that user sees. So to do this, I will first get all the sections. So const sections equals, and here just document query selector all, and here section. But this will return an object of document node list, and I don't want this. I want this to be an array. So I can do some array functions. So to convert this, I will do just ... here, extraction to an array like this. So now we have sections. So now I want to compare for each section if the current scroll position is exactly at the top of any section. So let's do sections for each and for each section. And let's also use this index also here. So for each section, I want to check if the window page Y offset, so our current scroll position, is exactly the same as section offset top, then we know that we are at this section. So to save this information, let's put it in a variable on document. Let's do it, for example, on document last centered equals index. So here we are looping through all sections and we are checking if the current scroll position is exactly the same as position of the section. Yeah, then the document last centered section is the index of the section. So on the beginning it will be 0 here because the index of the first section will be 0. Let's also define it here. Document last centered equals 0. All right. Okay, so now we know where we are at and we know the direction. So now we need to do the scrolling. So let's calculate what will be the next section. If we are scrolling down, then the next section will be last centered +1. Otherwise, if we are scrolling up, the next section will be last centered -1. So let's call this destination index, and the destination index will equal depending on the direction. So if direction is up, then the destination index will be document last centered -1 because we are scrolling up. Otherwise, it will be document last centered +1. All right. So now we know the destination of the section, so we can check if this destination is okay. So first we need to check if the destination index is not smaller than 0, so bigger or equal than 0. So we can't scroll to section -1 because it doesn't exist. And same with destination index needs to be smaller than section's length, because if we have 5 sections, we can't scroll to the 10th section. Okay, so now the section exists, so we can do the scrolling. So window, scroll, and now the first param is X, so it will be 0 from the left, but from the top it will be sections, and here destination index, and here on the section we can do offset top. All right, let's save it. Now if I test, you can see that it scrolls really fast and it just jumps through them. To make this scrolling smoother, I will go to styles CSS, and here at the top I will add HTML, and here scroll behavior to smooth. And now let's see, it's not working as it should, but let's see why. Let's do console log here, and let's console log the destination index and maybe direction. And now if I open my console, let's see what happens when we scroll. It's triggering a lot of events, and it shouldn't, because when it's already scrolling, it shouldn't trigger more scrolling. So here we need to save information that we are scrolling right now, and it shouldn't go inside this if again. So if we are scrolling, don't scroll even more. All right. So to fix this, we need to save information that we are on the way to a section. So let's do document. Let's call this one on way to and the destination index. So here we check that we are on the way to this destination index. And here at the beginning, we can check that this document on way to is empty. So I'll put all of this here inside this if, and here I will check that document on way to is exactly null. So we are scrolling to a section only if we are not already scrolling. Otherwise it will trigger like thousands of events. All right, so let's check it now. Let's refresh, and we need to define it here first. So it will be null. Yeah, it works, but it works only on the first scroll. And that's because we are not setting it back to null if we are at a specific section. So what happens is it's null on the beginning, but then after the first scroll, we set this to the destination index. But when we land on the destination index, we are not setting it back to null. But we can do this here. Here we check for each section if the current scroll is at this section. So we can add also here, if the document on way to is exactly the index of the section, then we know that we landed on this section. We landed on this section, and our on way to was also this section. So our scrolling is done. So we can set it to null. Document on way to equals null. Let's test it now. Yeah, it works. Okay, one last thing, it would be nice to have this animation that this text is fading. Let's see. Yeah, if we scroll on this website, it fades out and fades in. And on our, it doesn't. It's just there. So to fix this, we are going to set the active class name to the active section. So here, where we know that we are at this section, we can do section class name active. So when we are looping through all the sections, we check if the current scroll position is that section. If yes, then we are setting active to that section. We should do also that otherwise. So else, if we are not at this section, we should do section class name equals empty string. So now if I just open inspect here we have all our sections, and you can see that this one is active. It has active class name here. And if I scroll to the top, this one is active. So now based on this, we can add some CSS for styling and transitioning the content. So let's go back to our style CSS and let's scroll down to section content. So first, as you can see on the Tesla website, the content is fixed with the position, and on our is not fixed. It's aligned to the slide, but here it stays even if we are scrolling. So to fix it, I will add position fixed, and let's test now. Yeah, but now we need to also add this fade, and we need to update the text. So here in my sections, I will just quickly update that not all are model 3, but this one is model Y, the third one is model S, and the fourth one is model X. And now let's go back to style CSS and see, okay, we have model 3, still model 3, still model 3. Okay, that's wrong. So we need to make this one opacity 0. So we are not showing any content, and we are only showing content of an active section. So section.active, and now on the content, we can do opacity 1. So now we are showing model 3, and now this one doesn't show. I think it's because we forgot to add top 0. See, yeah, now it works, but it just pops up and there's no fading effect. So I will do transition, and here opacity, let's put 0.5 seconds, and is now if we scroll, yeah, that's much better. Let's make it faster, 0.2 seconds, maybe 0.3. So now if we scroll, yeah, and the first is not visible. I need to set this one as a default. So let's go back to index.html, and now the first section is active on the beginning. So let's do class active. All right. So now if we scroll, yeah, we have some fading effect. Cool. Okay, one thing I forgot about, because the section of the content is fixed, then it's above our backdrop. So when we open the navigation, the backdrop is behind the content of a section. So to fix this, we scroll to the backdrop of our CSS file, in our CSS file, and we add that index of, let's say, 3. So now the content of our sections is behind the backdrop. So it works when we click on it. So that's all for today. I hope you learned something, and if you did, please click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Have a nice day and see you in the next one.